Hey everyone, welcome back to another class for the shared housing class for real estate investors. We are in module 2 right now, and we have been spending quite a bit of time talking about sober living and mental health, and then also some of the government funding around the courts. I do want to share that the reason we are starting with this and having such a focus on this is because this is the most stringent of shared housing as it relates to there's a lot of rules involved. The war against drugs, there's funding around it. And so if you want to get into any population, this would be one where it sets the tone for the most arduous of the rules. And so that means that you can back down on your house rules. But that also means that you're going to have to look for different kinds of funding sources. And so if you wanted to do, let's say, only veterans, and you're thinking that those individuals are not coming out of a detox or a hospital related to detox, that's completely reasonable. But you'll want to keep in mind that there's probably still going to be some drug and alcohol abuse or use, even if the person did not go to detox for that, because most people in the United States, they do drink, they are prescribed medications. And hopefully, if you are dealing with a population, whether that be 18-year-olds that are coming out of the family court system, hopefully they are not addicted to drugs and alcohol. That would be great, but you still should be asking these questions on your application, and then also know how to deal with those things inside of your house if you are not, necessarily doing a sober living house. I know right now, one of our houses, we actually still have sober people living there, but we no longer advertise that for sober living per se. We just, we ask if they have an addiction, and they'll let us know that on the application. And in that house, we're not giving drug tests at this moment, but we previously did. We could go back to that. And the point is that, we want to have respectful people who are maybe 1 year sober. We do have somebody who just moved in 2 days ago, and she's actually right out of the hospital, and she just detoxed from alcohol. And so she's living with other sober people. But in that particular house, we are not taking government funding for sober living or drug court. Instead, those individuals living there are on fixed income Social Security. And like I said, she just detoxed from alcohol in a hospital. Her caseworker and her, she found us actually on Craigslist, but her caseworker called us because she wanted to pull weight to make sure that she got into the house. And we, of course, want to have that relationship with the hospital. So we were happy to ensure that, she got moved to the head of the pack. So anyhow, we're going to get going here on crime analysis when you guys are looking at where these houses are located that you have in your portfolio. And so we do have Julie back to share with us how she looks at that. Hi, Julie. Welcome again.
Hi, thank you.
And real quick, before we get started into crime analysis and other things regarding, what the standard operating procedures are for a sober living facility, or even, I would say, a more strict shared house. Let's say that it's even aged out foster care and you want to have curfews in place. Or maybe you're dealing with people who do have some mental health issues for one reason or another, or maybe they're sexual offenders. And so we are going to do today, basically, we're going to go through this short video. And then we're going to have Julie tell us about her spot crime that she uses when she does an analysis on where our properties might be. And then we're going to look at the standard operating procedures for those more strict house rules. Okay, so let's get started with this video.
This trio passing a large pipe to these people with a straw. A woman hunching over to smoke inside her shirt. a man urinating on the wall.
It's pretty constant, and we don't know what we're going to get.
Monty and Dory Tyden live right behind Crossroads Detox Center on Osborne Road. And it's not just about what the visitors to the center are doing outside. It's also about what they leave behind.
Well, there may have been 20, 30 of these little purple pills that, when the police were notified, they were hesitant to even take it.
Crossroads opened this location in 2020. Neighbors say they thought it was going to be an office building for the treatment provider. But then the organization obtained a special use permit to keep patients overnight, and the problem started right away.
I'm like, do you need something? What is the issue? Why did you try to come in our house? And she's like, I just want to use the phone. I'm trying to check into Crossroads.
Now, this is the neighborhood, and this is the facility, and you can see just how close they are. This grassy area is what you're seeing in most of those videos. Now, Crossroads executive director says they did put up these cameras, but neighbors say it makes it worse because now the users are going into the neighborhood or the alley to do drugs.
The security guard is limited to their property. So if they go off to the alley, if they go off down the street, if they're in a car smoking up in the neighborhood, it's not their problem.
What they've done is just it's not nearly enough.
Attorney Tim Lasota is representing the neighbors. He said he's exploring all legal options.
We could also potentially file a nuisance suit. I think those are starting to be taken more seriously.
In a statement, Crossroads executive director wrote they have, quote, increased security to 24 hours, 7 days a week on site, and added motion-activated video surveillance at the rear of the Crossroads facility facing the neighborhood. Meanwhile, the Tydens and their neighbors want more than another meeting with Crossroads and the city. They want a solution.
Now, we also reached out to the city. They sent us a statement confirming they are engaging with community members to identify issues and find a solution. Back to you.
So, Julie, what do you think of that, seeing it for the first time?
So I want to say that, doing our boutique shelters and having the opportunity to have a little bit better control over, the actual house and how you choose it is the difference here. So when I say that, I mean that when we have a house, and this from one of the houses that Katie's house has, you can take the drug funding and you can get that funding. But if you can choose to not have every single bed filled with that funding, then you're going to have a better outcome for what these people are dealing with. So they basically took the funding, they've opened this center up, and they've allowed everybody to come in there that actually can, try to get off drugs. But a lot of times when you, like you said, you just had somebody move in that's just coming out of the hospital setting, unless they have other people around them to try to guide them to do the better thing, they're probably going to all get together and come up with a grand idea to start drinking or smoking or whatever, doing again, right? So I think that, that's where now they're going to, they're trying to say that they're trying to fix everything, but they really have to control their residents. That's what they have to do. And when you get into shared housing and you get that funding, just be aware that you want to try to balance it.
So I agree with you completely. And for those who might be watching this and you don't know Julie's background, she is law enforcement for 27 years, and she is a liaison that sits on the drug court and the Veterans Mental Health Court. And this is really valuable for you and I to discuss right now, because you have seen commercial shelters where they have more than 10 people. And then what we're trying to do at Katie's House Foundation and what our model is to have on average 10 people, which includes a house president. And it's an unpaid role, but it's basically the house, some people might call him a house narc or something, but we would call them somebody who's very particular and they want things to be done right. They're like the house mama or the house papa, and they complain a lot to your property manager if the fridge is broken or if the dishwasher is not working, but that's okay because it keeps up the maintenance on the property. And in addition to that, they set the tone for what's happening in the house. And in these large commercial enterprises, if it's, I was thinking about this last night. If it's completely free and the government's paying for it, maybe an operator doesn't necessarily care what's going on in their house and if the people are staying sober or if they're following curfew, even if it's not a sober house. Let's just say that it's, aged out foster care, veterans, whatever. But the point is this: if you don't have someone there making sure that people are following the rules, the people that we're helping, they probably don't already have the discipline, or they've lost the discipline over the years because of the lack of accountability. And that's what I think, Julie, you're touching on, right? Is essentially with 10 people in a house, it's much easier to know who the bad apples are. And then also having a house manager there, they can pick those off pretty quickly.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit before on some of the other modules about accountability and about how you're kind of trying to hold up the other residents in the house. That you are going to always find somebody that doesn't have the motivation to have that step up, I guess, in sense of being from the street to a house. And once they get into that house and they realize they can't just do anything that they wanted to do, then they either go outside and they cause problems in the neighborhood, or they eventually are just going to leave. And so that having that person there to say, hey, this person isn't a good fit, they're already doing this, this, and this, is a clue for your management and for you to be able to kind of and just like we have, if I own multifamily residence and I had, one gangbanger on one side and a veteran on the other, the veteran wanted to leave because I couldn't control the gangbanger, right? And I would rather have the veteran there. So I think being able to tell early what's going on and how things are going is key here. And having that ability to kind of look from the outside to see if the environment on the outside of your house is also going to be something that they are drawn to cause more problems.
Yes, I would agree with that. And in your situation, it was a normal landlord-tenant lease, right? So you couldn't
correct
have that person.
Well, I actually rented to a female, but it ended up that this other friend moved in and then she ended up moving out because she couldn't control the guy. So I ended up with somebody that I had to, try to force evict. But in the meantime, I lost one of my other tenants because I didn't have, some states you can't kick people out in a couple weeks. It takes time. So that was the problem there. But it's the same kind of issue with knowing what's going on. Had I had the ability to have, the shared housing and I had this guy in the house, I would have immediately said, you're not a good fit, you're out. Your week's up, goodbye.
This is really important to make sure that your agreements are written in a way that they're supposed to be written. Most people are very familiar with long-term lease. This shared housing is the way of the future due to affordability. The reason that Katie's House Foundation is moving towards people on fixed income, Social Security, disability income, and things of that nature are because we know that those individuals are only making about $1,300 per month. And we're, leasing out the rooms, shared rooms, for $600 or $800, maybe even $900 per month. And that only leaves them with $500 for groceries. And if they drive for fuel, sometimes they get free rides. But the point is that if you look at your population and how much they're making and you consider like where their mindset is at or where their income is coming from. So in the case of a drug dealer, right? But that girl let in her boyfriend and now you can't get rid of them. And so there are just so many benefits to shared housing as it relates to the nitty-gritty of helping people, and then also being able to remove those people if you know that they are not a good fit. Also, having these standards and enforcing those right away are going to be important, because if somebody's not paying you, you know, they need to come on out. And yesterday we finished up the class on talking about having a relationship with the local police in advance to let them know that you're running your house as a shelter. You are licensed and insured as a shelter. You're doing something good for the community, and they're aware in advance of those kinds of things so they don't have egg on their face if they get called over there and have to help you out in some way. But anyhow, let's get into, I just want to say before we get into the spot crime that if this was one of our houses, having people using drugs outside at Katie's House Foundation, this is again why we have a good neighbor policy and why we have external cameras on our houses, regardless of where they're located in the United States. We will always have cameras on the outside that are fully operational and being monitored 24/7. We pay about $30 a month to have that service. And, you know, we can check those on our phone. So if there's an alarm that goes off, we get a call right away if that's a fire alarm or something. But also we can refer back to that. So if you have somebody using drugs on the back patio or in the back alley, you know, those kinds of things are important. If people were going down the alley and using drugs and that was related to our house, I'm not sure how we would know about that unless somebody reported that to us. And at that point, I'm sure we would have an inkling on who it is.
Well, I think your in-house people will actually know. I mean, you're not only going to see them walk away on the camera, or you're going to see the group of people leave on the camera, but you're going to have other people in the house that know that when they come back, they're acting in a nonsensical way, and then that's just going to lead you to tell what exactly they were doing when they were out. So
and then they get searched.
And what?
And then they get searched.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, that comes back to the, you know, whatever operating procedure, however you want to have those things in place. But at least you have the knowledge, and I think that that's what we're trying to do here, is to give you the knowledge that you have beforehand, before things happen, and then something happens. Because basically, what happens with that news story that you just showed is that. I'm not saying that they didn't think these things through, and I'm not saying that they didn't know about some of this stuff, but I think that because of the way that housing is changing and the way that cost of living is changing and working, and people, you know, want everything for free, which is a totally different conversation, but, you know, people that you rent to will want things for free, right? So we want to be able to have things that are set in such a way that your failure rate is less and less each time you rent to somebody. And that's what we're trying to get at here. And I'll just get right into it. And one of the, you know, like, obviously, you know, Kirsten and I have been able to give consulting, and we can look into places for you. But we just want to give you some basics on how to get there if that's what you're looking to do. So if you're looking at, I have this house, I have this 4 or 5 bedroom, 6 bedroom house in this neighborhood, you know, and I know, Kirsten, you've done this and I've done this too. I go to a place and I sit in the driveway and I sit there and I see what happens. Well, nothing's happening, right? Oh, this is a good neighborhood. Well, it depends what time you sit there, right? So this is one of the things that I use. This isn't exclusively all I use, but I find that the best way to put this down on video is that this is something where you can go to, you can put an address in, it's called spotcrime.com. And the difference with this website is that it's not giving you a color-coded area of where a crime is, it's actually giving you what was reported. Now, everything that's reported isn't always what it actually is, but in the sense that a lot of the stuff, if it's shots fired, you know, it's probably shots fired. It's probably, you know, I mean, if it's firecrackers, we're not going to code it as shots fired. We're going to code it as something else. So a lot of times these actual things that are coming out are probably going to be what's happening in the neighborhood. Now it's going to be a little bit more of a general, and I was trying to come up with the best way to explain, you know, obviously these maps are set for a certain radius of crime around that address. So once you look at those maps and you see what's happening, if you zoom in, Kirsten, on the the crosshair, the crosshairs are obviously the shootings. Those are the little bit more violent crimes. You're always going to get crime in an area. You know, you're going to pull your address up and you're going to see crime everywhere, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's not the tall tale. You want to look at certain violent crimes. Assault isn't always, you know, the telltale anyway, but look for the crosshairs and look for the dates. Now this is only going to report within a certain amount of time. So this might be something where if you own this house now, you know, when you get done with this class today, pull that up, take a look at it, see what it says today. Then next week, go back and see what it's changed to, because I think on here, Kirsten, if you highlight, yeah, there you go. So if you highlight what's on there, it'll tell you what the crime was and when it happened, and about where it happened. I don't think it gives you an exact address, right? It probably just gives you an intersection. And when I look at things and people want to consult with me, a lot of times I'll look at major intersections, major areas. And if I feel like, you know, this is something I need to look into, this neighborhood a little bit more, there's enough information online and enough crime statistics to tell you whether or not this is a consistent happening thing. Does that make sense, Kirsten?
Yeah, I think this is a great resource, spotcrime.com. All you do is go there, drop in your address, and then it pulls it up. And, you know, like you, I would be looking for things like these shots fired and opening up these other things. I know, Julie, you being a police officer and now, you know, semi-retired, you have access to other resources that you're not able to share with us that are great when somebody hires you for consulting. And we're lucky enough to have you to help us with those kinds of things. And so I would just really recommend, this is kind of like the base level that everyone needs to be checking. And like you're saying, as far as looking at these thoroughfares kind of a thing, these main veins. So the house address that I put in is right around here, Euclid, remember. So from the first few classes that we did, we had a house on Euclid, and I had said that I would be willing to do that house because I liked where the bus stops were. I liked where the shopping was. There was work opportunity. And so as it related to transportation and having a positive outlook, and even it looked like it was a B-class neighborhood. There weren't people standing outside, you know, dealing.
Yeah. So now that you've zoomed in and you've got your little your locator there, and you know where your house is, you know, the fact that that major street is just south of your icon, and if you go out a little bit further, you'll see another major street, and that's where you kind of see some of those more active things. So I guess what I'm going for is that just because these show up on your map doesn't mean that that's happening A, all the time in that neighborhood, and B, that your house, you know, oh, we can't do this because we've got shootings in my neighborhood. Like I said in the beginning, there's always things that are going to happen at certain times in areas, and just taking one day or 1 week's, you know, information on the crime isn't the best way to do it. And if you're familiar with the town that you own the property in, and this is somewhere you live by, you're going to know where most of the police response calls are going. Are they going on the west side of town? Are they going on the north side of town? And where is your area? So like, I had some property in Winnebago County in Rockford, Illinois. And in Rockford, Illinois, there's a river. And I owned property on both sides of the river. And I was always told, you know, this side of the river is the worst. Well, I'll tell you, one of my properties was a crack house on the right side of the river. So you can't tell me that for some reason, that little pocket of neighborhood there. Now, the city had done a lot to try to fix some of those issues in that neighborhood, but they were just having a real hard time with that particular neighborhood. And that was probably like a 6 block by 6 block area. And some of the other, housing developments had been on the other side of a major street. So I think in this particular case, we're just looking at your case study here. I know this is in Albuquerque, is that correct?
Well, I actually just changed the address because I wanted to pull up a comparison for that one was the Albuquerque from our earlier classes that I would do business in.
Okay.
And, there were 2 shots fired this month in September, which weren't there previously when you looked at that area a couple weeks ago. But this is actually one, it's a 6-bedroom, 2-bath. And
where's this one?
This one's in Fairfield, Alabama, which when you Google Alabama, since that's where we primarily operate right now, there are some pockets that they say are like the worst, and Fairfield is one of the worst. But I really like this 6-bedroom, 2-bath, and I like the price. I like everything about it. It's been rehabbed. But when I look at
zoom in a little bit, I want to see this this major thoroughfare that kind of goes diagonal here. So really, I mean, the crime is kind of like not exactly anything outside of the norm for me on this particular graph. Do you see anything that I would say that makes it more crime-ridden?
Well, I think that don't you think? I mean, if we just count these shots fired off, there's like 10 on here versus the other map, there was 2.
Okay. But I guess I was referring to the little blue, like I'm looking at, like just in on average, if that's a very high crime area, then yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not including the shots fired on this particular case because what are you going to place here? What are you thinking of opening a shelter for? And you're always going to have something around there. What were you thinking of using this house for?
So initially we were going to do a women's family special purpose, but when I look at this, I don't think that that's the best special use. I think that this one might be better for veterans hospital to housing and maybe doing a men's house. So that way we don't have children there just because, and also perception is reality and reality is reality. So when you, as a police officer for 27 years, your looking glass is a lot different than mine and your tolerances because you have operated in some neighborhoods in Chicago or Illinois that, I don't personally know that I would want to go to those places. I have been to this address in this neighborhood, and there is a college literally right at the end of the street right here. That's very popular. And so even this house could be used for college housing for people that want to walk 3 blocks to that college. So those are the 2 things I think looking at this.
So if I was doing your analysis here, I would definitely say that I would lean towards more boutiquing it for that purpose, for the educational shared housing for people looking for education. And I only say that because if there are other places that they have to go, like you talked about before, where's the transportation? How are they getting to and from the school? How are they getting to and from work? If there's an ability to walk to that school, then I would say that I think you would get a little bit, people would overlook some of the other things in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so Miles College is right here. And so generally people who go to Miles College are local from Birmingham or Alabama. And, they, I think, would be fine in this area. This is why we have to take a look at these houses and spend a few hours designating them for a special purpose. And if you want to do, like you were talking about, Julie, you said that your daughter, you're paying $800 for her to double bunk for her culinary school. So that might be a special purpose for people listening who want to get into offering housing to college students and really developing those relationships with, the people at the colleges, because the wait lists for dorm housing is so long in most colleges just because there's so many Airbnbs, and there are not enough houses now, and there's not enough commercial facilities that are available at a price that's right. So, yeah, but you know, we have not decided to go down that path. Do I think this would work for people on fixed income, Social Security, disability, and hospital to housing? Yes,
and I think maybe that would be a little bit of where we touched on, 20 minutes ago, that this would be something where you could definitely take somebody that's on a fixed income, maybe put them as house manager, and have some of the younger kids that need to go to college in that area, and when they start a party or they want to party, they're accountable on the fact that there's an older person in the house that doesn't want to party. And so you're less likely to have more of a problem. And I think that that's where, like you're running your house as a little bit of a, you want to focus in on that, but you want to accept, one or two exceptions, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, let's talk about that, about age. At Katie's House Foundation, we're okay having, like, I would say a 25-year age band. And so that might be ages 25 to 50 or 25 to 55. And then we would go maybe 55 and over. And that's what we've been doing so far. And that has worked out perfectly fine. We do find out that the older people, naturally want to cook. They know how to coupon clip. They've already, they have 20 years, 30 years behind them, where the 25-year-old does not.
Well, and they're thinking about other things, right? I mean, but for the purposes of, picking this house and having it as a special use, we're talking about crime here, right? And those kids that are younger are going to be more apt to be involved in more crimes of opportunity, or, those, going out, doing stuff, right? So I think either one of those would work for this. And even, like I said, a little bit of both. Now, I wouldn't put kids and children in this neighborhood. I probably wouldn't put trafficking either, only because the susceptibility of the outside environment might not be that great with the school being there. And I would, you're going to get veterans that are just out of, the military too, that might want a place. So yeah, I mean, I think in this, like I said, just using this particular website would do wonders for somebody that wants to say, oh, well, this worked for me. And I have other sites that I use, and I have other things that, like you mentioned, that I can look into to see exactly what's going on. And there's, if you're familiar with your area and you know that there's a little bit more of a youth problem in the area, then you might not want to focus in on that. You might want to focus in on doing it more of like you said, that age area where you're 25 and over, right? Because now they're getting the housing they need. They can still get to where they want to be, but they're not going to be sucked into the environment that's outside.
Yes. I wanted to pull up city-data.com, which is something that we use, that maybe you don't use, Julie, but this is something we look at and rely on to see, the growth of the area and the population change, so, and we want to know.
We use that for other investments in real estate, right? I mean, we want to know, is there a, I know that Starbucks isn't going to build in an area that isn't going to bring in the income for that Starbucks. And I know that, having just, maybe a little bit more of a rural area, where do they have to shop? And that website will actually give you some of that information. So I don't particularly use it just because I'm focusing more in on the neighborhood and what the crime is in that particular area of the house. But yeah, this is very useful to find several things about the area that the house is located in, a little bit on a bigger scale, right? Because you're talking about where the jobs, you're talking about, other demographics. So
yeah, it will pull up some crime stuff by year as well. So if you're looking for more of a history, you can jump into that. And, you know, like you said about Starbucks, you can go all the way down to the bottom and see what businesses are there. And so if you are investing out of your comfort zone, I just recommend citydata.com to make sure that you're looking at a lot of different things. Anyhow, that's another tool for everyone, including crime on there. Now, I want to move into the standard operating procedures and some of the other things that we do specific to sober living, which people might want to include. You know, I'm going to include this standard operating procedures, which is, I think it's about 20 pages, and well worth the $1,500 that you paid for this class. You can edit this, put your own logo on it, and you will need to do that. Of course, don't use exactly our stuff. So let me grab this. And Julie, while I'm doing that, you know, is there anything top of mind for you, you know, right away when you look at an address for yourself that you are looking for?
Well, I mean, I would encourage people that, as you've been told in other investing, you know, seminars or educational things, that people always have to have somewhere to live. So I think that, you know, trying to make it so that you're just having less of an issue down the road when it comes to, oh, if I would have known, I would have never, you know, done this in this neighborhood. You just have, you know, like if it's finding a property manager and then you have a house, but you can't find anybody who wants to go in that neighborhood, or you've got, you know, other factors that you need to have in place and you're having a problem with trying to fill that spot because of the actual location, then I would say that having a shared housing in that area may not be a good fit. So, you know, it's like I talk out of two sides of my mouth, right? Because I say, well, you know, housing needs to be everywhere, but at the same time, you're running a business and you're trying to run a successful business. And with that, you know, you don't want too many roadblocks. And I think a roadblock of not being able to have a management or a maintenance team because they won't go to that particular part of town, that's a big sign that may not be a good fit for just the project that you want to undertake here.
Yeah, I would say that's a property that you flip or that you wholesale, not one that you create passive income or shared housing on because you want it to be easier. So definitely, this is why we talk about B-class neighborhoods. We want pretty much any property manager, any service, like even the trash truck, just it's no big deal, right? People are not worried about having their car broken into when they go to the property for whatever reason that they might go there. Not that you would even be worried about that, but the locals might be worried about that.
Well, I just, you know, like I said, I know that, you know, like obviously in Birmingham, there's some neighborhoods that aren't the best too. And that even though we have houses in those areas, we have those people that'll go there. And that's what I'm saying. So you might have, you know, you might be told no by one person, but, you know, somebody else may go there. So as long as you can get the support staff that you need to go to where you want to have this house and you want to run this, then I think you'll be successful in the sense that you'll follow some of the stuff we're telling you. I mean, we're trying not to sugarcoat everything and be all about the numbers and all about the income, right? We want to make it so that you're in a position to have all of these policies and procedures ready, have a plan, and you can execute it when you have to. We hope you don't have to execute it, but if you did, that would be one of the reasons why we're talking about this here today.
I will tell you, you know, when we got started, it did take a little bit of interviewing to find people who lived in the area. And we did that through Facebook investment groups and asking for referrals, because just trying to, and even that, I mean, trying to find them on Yelp and Google that was a great starting point, and we got referrals from that. But also just talking to 3 people, you know, for property management, and then maintenance, and finding out that they actually live within maybe about 15 minutes of the property, that was hugely beneficial. And also that they've lived there for 10 years or more was hugely beneficial, because they're like, oh yeah, I'll go over there, because they just understand the way of the culture. And so even if you're not there and let's say that you live there, but maybe you're an hour away, you know, they of course just pop on over. It's no big deal. And so you don't want this to be hard. You don't want to have a crazy train here, because you are dealing with people who are healing and they're in recovery, but you don't want to be in recovery with them per se, right? You want to run a business and have people who are also running their businesses, whether that be the maintenance team or the property manager, and they're just comfortable dealing in those environments because they live close by. And so that makes this a lot easier for you to scale your business and to also have income coming in. Let's move on now to the NARR Standards 3.0, which you guys, I'll drop, of course, into the class documents. And this is the gold standard, in my opinion, for writing your own policies and procedures from scratch. If you would like to do that for any type of shared housing, it's going to ask you essentially 11 pages worth of questions. And out of that, you and your team, if you would like to spend a couple solid weeks of putting together these standard operating procedures, you can go ahead and do that. Or if you would like, you can take our standard operating procedures for sober living houses and use those with your own logo and, you know, change maybe a few things if you need to. Your mission is going to be different. Your vision might be different, but certainly if you're following the Katie's House Foundation, ours are original to us based on where we operate, which I think in some of these areas in Birmingham that we've started in, the houses were bought for $50,000 and then they were improved for $50,000, and now they're worth between $150 and $200, but they are leaning more in the B or C class. I would say closer to the C class. And I have seen that as a problem for us. And so that is why I really think that people need to stay in what others would say, oh, that's a nice area. If somebody says, oh, that's a nice area, it's not the rich area. You know, people know what the rich area is. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, oh, that's a nice area. Not, oh, you know, I don't really want to be a property manager there.
I don't go to that area. Yeah, you'll hear that. I don't go to that area.
Yeah. So, and
or you can find some of the areas too that, you know, have just that little bit that the city is putting money into that's getting better and better. And they're going to want to see that people are going into that area. And you know, so that's also something where I took advantage of that when I was in Rockford, that they were really spending a lot of money to regentrify some of the area, and that I got the, you know, ability to use that to my advantage as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And you just have to think about, what is that house again going to be used for? You don't want to take people who are recovering from drugs or human trafficking, even labor trafficking, and they have ties to that kind of behavior, and you stick them in an environment where they're close to that behavior, because you're supposed to be taking them away from that in distance, right? Actually move them 20 minutes or 30 minutes away from that kind of block, if you will. Now,
well, and that's where you're talking, you know, like you had pulled that last one up from Birmingham, where you were showing from Albuquerque. I mean, obviously they're two different, you know, even parts of the country, but you're talking, you know, less violent crime in one area than another, and that you can still see that, you know, you can fit certain types of boutiques in each area. And it's just going to be a matter of, where your support staff is and how you're handling that.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why on some of these that are more C class, we've had to focus on fixed income and not sober living, because even though they might have a background regarding trying to get sober or becoming sober, they're older, and if that behavior is going on outside, they're not really concerned with it because they have other things that they're thinking about, like their grandchildren, for example, or even just their children. So, okay, I want to show you our resident welcome agreements. Let me pull this up as it relates to sober living. I just showed you the NARR standards. And out of those NARR standards, which just so you guys know, most states have a National Alliance of Recovery Residents. And that means that there is a group of people a board who you can get in contact with, and they can actually come and inspect your house if you would like them to. I don't think that that's necessary unless you want to pay to be a part of that. And your house does need to be 50% occupied for at least 60 days. And if you want to do that, I think that's great. You're going to have a lot of support. That's what you're paying that committee for. If you prefer to use their standards and operate that way, just using their standards and having your own standards, I also would recommend that as well. Maybe you save yourself $200 a year and not have to go to all these different trainings, but it's completely up to you. Training is great, of course. Anyhow, let me get on to our SOPs and welcome agreements for sober living. And what I want to show you here for the next 15 minutes is some of the stuff that is different than what's on our website. You're going to see that number 3 here, residents must participate in regular meetings. The weekend house meeting is required. Additional meetings may include a house activity, like on Wednesday, the house does something together like pizza and movie night. They also go to AA or NA. They do educational classes and they do volunteer work. And so these are required for them to live at the sober living house to keep them engaged in sober activities. Julie, do you have anything to say on this note?
So in drug court, one of the things that we look for in recovery is that they have a sponsor. And so I know with a lot of the online things now that they can go to AA on the computer and such, but I think having that contact with people and having that ability to make connections, I think a lot of times helps them stay on that path to recovery. So that's probably why they want you to have that type of SOP, due to the fact that it only helps them in the sense that they're connecting with other people, not only in the house, but outside of the house too, when they have their relapse issues come up.
Yeah. Any triggers?
Yeah, just, could be an outside environment, it could be an inside environment, but those operating procedures to have them actually, involved in things in the house is going to allow them to make those connections so that they're less likely to cause an issue with others in the house. Because having no communication, you've had roommates before, right? If you have no communication with them and they do something that, ticks you off, you don't have any personal connection to them to overlook that. And in drug court, we actually do want them to have a sponsor for sure. And we want them to participate in outside activities to keep them busy.
I will tell you that this is a point of contention when almost anyone calls that's a private payer versus coming from a government, who's telling them this is the house that you're going to, or like whether that be they're coming out of the jail, or they're coming out of drug court, you know, or even they're coming out of a detox and like mom and dad are paying for them to go to a transitional house. I mean, they just want to, in my experience, normally they're like, how many meetings do I have to go to? They know they have to go to the meetings, but they want to know. So try and keep this as simple for them as you can. We, you know, definitely the Sunday house meeting, because what Julie, like you're talking about, there has to be open communication, which is why it's great to have a house manager who's the person who's in charge of saying, you know, everyone in the house works where we have like that's one of our rules, is that you need to be working. Normally they're not working for the first 4 weeks until they find job, or sometimes if they're in an IOP and they have too much counseling going on, they actually can't get to work, or if they don't have transportation. And that's why there are online meetings, especially with COVID, but still having someone come in, a sponsor come in for that Wednesday meeting. That's really the purpose of the Wednesday meeting for us, is that a sponsor can come and they can rotate sponsors. And so again, we're trying to make things easier on them because they're already feeling like the weight of the world and they're trying to make changes, but we need to meet these drug court requirements, which the NARR Standards 3.0 does a pretty good job, and also the levels of care. That's something that we need to talk about. When I was saying earlier that if somebody doesn't want to stay at your house, maybe the level of care is not appropriate for that individual. And so you might want to call their probation officer or their peer support or their caseworker, or, you know, guardian at Litem, whoever your point contact is, that's not the judge and that's not the grant manager, and just say, hey, listen, this level of care, they need to be moved into a higher level of care, because, or even a lower level of care. So that's why having another house might be good for them to progress. So
now, if I may interject, so a lot of times when I have drug court, and a lot of times it's usually a female, and I've got her not wanting to live in some of those higher level of care things, but she wants to live in like a Katie's house because it allows her to kind of have that like personal space. So, you know, the standard operating procedures are trying to protect the fact that there's different stages that each person goes through when they go through recovery. And they're just trying to make it so that they don't fail, right?
Right.
And that having all these people in the same house makes it difficult for some people because they feel more vulnerable, right? So when we do get these females, or occasionally a male that wants to choose their own place to live, it does make it a little bit harder for them because they got to have the transportation to get back and forth to that other counseling. But I think too, they'll want to abide by the rules of the house and the procedures that you're giving out, due to the fact that they are kind of on their own path, but they want to succeed.
Yeah, I will tell you, just so you guys can get into the money part of this, that in California, you're looking at about $1,100 per bed from drug court, is my understanding. I mean, I haven't gone through their next, you know, round of funding at all. To lease a house there, it's about $4,500 for a 5-bedroom house. And if we had 10 beds that are people actively in recovery, you know, we're looking at, right, $11,000. And we're going to take that formal dining room or the dining space, and we're going to make the house manager their own separate room there, with some kind of privacy, since we don't own the place. Now, if we own the place, we would probably permanently modify that wall and put a door in. But I want you guys to understand, you know, of that $11,000, you of course have your mortgage, you have your insurance, you have utilities and things of that nature. You have drug testing, and we previously talked about the fact that you need to have at least the saliva test and at least a mid-level breathalyzer. And if the person's not willing to take the test, that's your first indication that there's probably something wrong. And if they are willing to take it and they fail both modalities, then that's a fail. And so I actually did want to also get on to the checklist for those kinds of things when you welcome a guest, but really quick, let me finish going through some of these other things. Julie, feel free to interrupt me as far as, if you see something that stands out, and we'll just see how far we get today, because we're going to have one more class on this for module 2. The residents obtain medically assisted treatment or a medical check-in once per month. That's one of our house rules. And that's basically, we want them to be checking in with their provider and then turning around and or the drug court, and then turning around and giving us their medical results. And if they won't give us their medical results, then we have a HIPAA release that we would send over. And then that would, hopefully the doctor would release that. The court would not release it. So just that we know that they're in a good state physically and mentally, and that they're sober if it's sober. Smoking's prohibited, no vaping. I will tell you that we actually ended up changing this rule that now we do allow for vaping outside of the house, because a lot of people use that as their one vice when they're getting sober for some reason.
It's meditation, but it's forced meditation. So yeah.
You have to be careful that they don't get cartridges that have THC, but it's really hard to check that.
Other than the smell, which now they mask it with other things. But I think that, like some of the stuff that you're going to have, you have these rules and you can only use them to eject people, if that makes sense. I mean, they're either going to follow it or they're not. So you'll know in a short amount of time. And they understand, coming from drug court or coming from a sanctioned requirement that they become sober. They know they're going to have all these rules. They know that what they're up against. Yeah. It's just a matter of what's their motivation to actually get sober, and how they're gonna have times where they use again. And like you said, if they test and they test positive, did they go 3 months without using and now all of a sudden they used once? Or is this, they just got here and they've tested, already positive?
Yeah. So number 11, guests are not allowed unless approved in writing. Curfew is 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and midnight on Friday and Saturday. People can leave the house at 5 a.m. That's because they probably have to go to work. Overnight passes may be available. I'll tell you that is a point of contention. Most people want an overnight pass. Until they are 6 months sober at Katie's house, we don't give out an overnight pass. It's just sorry.
And on drug court, I would say that there are in-house places, and they just usually leave at that point when they can't leave out because they know they want to go do what they want to do. So yeah, definitely stick to that one, because they're allowing them to go out, relapse and then get better and then come back is not a good idea.
Yeah. So drug tests are administered randomly, and when house rules are broken, failure to take a test when asked will lead to dismissal from the housing program. So if they just say, nope, sorry, I'm not going to take it, then they're automatically dismissed. They can go ahead and get their things together. We'll give them a 3-day notice or even a 7-day notice if we think that they are, we don't want them to be homeless, but we also can't have them being a danger to anybody in the house. So you just have to judge that. Rooms and vehicles may be inspected at random. And so we had one case where someone was constantly asking for an overnight pass. He wanted to work overnight. Nobody thought that was a good idea. And, he was smoking weed on the back patio. He came in, obviously everyone could smell it. And he was searched, and he had baggies and a scale and paraphernalia, and he was dealing marijuana. And it just was clear that he didn't value the housing at that point. He ended up leaving, and 24 days later, he wanted to know if he could come and pick up his Nikes and his shoes and his jackets. And at that point, we had already contacted him multiple times, multiple people, and said, hey, listen, you need to come and get your stuff. We've changed your house security codes, and we're sorry that, this didn't work out for you. And at that point, 24 days later, his stuff had been donated to a church. So you know, that was unfortunate, but that is just the way of his decision making. Okay, so we actually have to finish up right now. We're going to do the next class. We're going to actually start from this point because I want to finish going over this. And then also house manager training when you're receiving somebody into the house, and then also when you're exiting them out of the house. Julie, anything else? You have 5 seconds.
No, I appreciate you having me on here. And like I said, anything that you need help with, you can contact us directly and we can do something for you.
All right, everyone, have a great day. Talk to you soon.